Good morning. How are you today? Oh, it's a spring day without reservation. No wind, 50s, 60s. I'm not sure. Uh, Sun, can't beat it. And in fact, I've seen elements of growth. The little buds are coming out, and they're colorful, and that's kind of, well, it warms you. And I've passed another milestone. A lot of you probably have too. I got the Moderna vaccine, the first shot. No serious reaction. I'm told the second shot is when you can get knocked on your keister. So I'm looking at that. More broadly than what's happening to me is that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of many more people getting the vaccines. And some people are being smart while some states are being very stupid. I think it's critical that we have a president who's out there pushing for the vaccine to be distributed and responding to the needs of communities that are not getting it fast enough. He's put together a serious team, which goes to show what government can do when government decides to serve the people instead. So that's pretty exciting. And also, today, we're going to pass, Congress is going to pass, we the people are going to pass, the $1.9 trillion act to stimulate the economy and to save people from the vagaries, the disasters that the pandemic presents. When you hear somebody say food insecure, don't you wonder why they don't say people are going hungry? When you talk about evictions, why don't we say we're concerned about people being homeless? When you talk about income, why aren't we talking about wage earners who, need to collect unemployment? What about small businesses that you see shuttered because they can't make it? People can't come see them. When I went to get my vaccine, for instance, there's a place, Penn's Chicken, and I called to get takeout, and so for the first time in more than a year I had Szechuan string beans, one of my favorites. And in the conversation through masks and at the doorway, I asked how the business was going, and they said we can only do takeout. And there was a sadness in her voice when she said that. There's possibility from this act that she can be helped until we can restore our society on every level safely, including businesses that operate best when you can be in confined quarters. So this bill is significant. And when Republicans talk about, oh, it's just a bunch of liberals they're helping, really? Is liberal, Republican, Democrat, independent the label you put on people who are hungry, out of work, businesses that are striving? And this bill contains things they also attack, which would give jobs to people in terms of restoring infrastructure. We also can't lose sight of the fact that this bill is one of the few avenues for the tenuous majority we have to make a difference for the better for the people of America, to promote the general welfare. And, that was a real ensemble production to get that done. And I'm very excited that Biden is out there selling it. He's explaining what it does, which will allow people to understand what they can take advantage of. So the nation's in a good place, and we're getting a lot of good news stories, which I know threatens pundits on the air to say something critical. So this is a good time. It's a good time to be alive. What a loud bird following me. It's a good time to be alive to make this kind of a difference. Now, returning to one of the substantive issues that won't be dealt with in a legislative fashion unless we get past the filibuster, the 60-vote threshold to pass any legislation in the Senate. We have the trial of Chauvin, Chauvin, the officer who killed George Floyd. And for those of you who are watching it and following it more closely than perhaps I am, here are a couple of things you should look at. One, what difference did it make that they did not indict him for murder? I think it makes a big difference in terms of argument, because when I open, I want to say, and there sits the fellow who killed George Floyd, a good man, troubled man not without flaws like you and me, but having nothing to do with the fact that this guy killed him. Now, is the court going to require, because there's no murder charge, you have to say something about, and he acted recklessly, and because he did, someone died. And we'll come back to that. The second point of this trial you should look at, and I haven't watched it closely, like I said, not even to read newspaper accounts of it, because the whole thing makes me furious. But the selection of the jury is critical. Now ask yourself, who on this planet has not seen that film and not formed a point of view? But if they say they've seen the film, or they like Black Lives Matter, what a judge does is the judge says, so can you put that out of your mind and listen to only what happens in this courtroom and decide up or down the significance of that with the instructions at law I give you, or some paraphrase like I've just said. And, some say, no, this guy killed him and I couldn't ever decide anything else, which may be closer to the truth for some of these jurors. And then they will be excluded or kept on the jury. Now, sometimes you hear stories how prosecutors try to keep blacks off juries because they think, because they're discriminated against and distrust the system, and there are other reasons, that they won't be helpful to the prosecution. In this case, I'm sure the prosecution would like persons of color on the jury, persons who've suffered, persons from the neighborhood, persons who understand this. And the defense would like to exclude blacks that are not favorable to their cause. And I did hear that there was one juror who said he supported Black Lives Matters, but not always how they transact their protests. Well, I don't know who he is or what he is, and I don't know if that helps or not. But those kinds of questions determine the jury. So there's like 2 points already. We've eliminated a charge. We've selected a jury. We're trying to manipulate who's on the jury to give an outcome to one side or the other. The third part is the trial. And I've outlined what a prosecutor can say if you have the murder charge. But if you don't have the murder charge and it's an unintentional killing, meaning, not like I didn't know the gun was loaded. I didn't know my knee in his neck was killing him. And we know that's not true. So his defense is going to be to try to turn this, that is the officer Chauvin, is going to be try to turn this into a negligence case. Oh, well, do you know who George Floyd was? Well, he had drugs in his system, he was a bad person, and there were intervening causes that no one could anticipate, and so you can't hold Chauvin responsible for that. I'm not saying it's going to be effective, but that's their argument, or as much of it as they can make. And they're going to try to shout and scream, in my opinion, when the prosecutors say, Chauvin killed Floyd. And so that's a trial problem, because from the defense standpoint, they figure all they have to do is create doubt. And they're going to bring in doctors to suggest things. Now, informally, the news media has talked to experts and said, it's not possible that any drugs in his system caused his death alone. And so the argument for the defense is there's an intervening cause, and by the knee on his neck, is not the proximate cause to his death. I could be wrong, and if I am, then these lawyers should be arrested for impersonating defense lawyers. But that's how I see the case shaping up. So you have to watch these things, because the defense thinks we just have to smear Floyd, say how sorry we are for all of his illness, but don't hold this officer accountable. And I assume that the prosecutors have figured out how to counter that from their opening and their cross and the witnesses they prepare, and hopefully the experts they put on the stand. So in a nutshell, that's my look at that. One last note I can think of that comes into my mind is, why do we care about the Royals when so many Americans are suffering from the pandemic. And why do we care that the host got $17 million interviewing them? There's still something backward. I liked Meghan Markle as an actress, and I do commiserate with the discrimination that I'm sure she suffered, and worse than when she was in the royal family as a princess. So I don't discount anything she said, but it's not news to me that the royals are racist, given we've all seen The Crown, right? So we know they have problems with modern day ethics. And that's why we don't have a king, a monarch. That's why we have a democracy. And I don't know what I would advise them, but I think I would have chosen something else than a memoir of how terrible it was being a royal. Just, I don't know. It's a hard sell when you're talking in a nation that's under siege because of a pandemic. So that's my thinking for the day. I suppose if I continued, I could think of 6 or 7 more things, but I've burdened you enough. So have a good day. Hope it's warm where you are. All the best. Bye-bye.